You're listening to the Wired for Impact podcast.
You've had the advantage of working with some amazing people, Zig Ziglar, Bob Proctor, Tony Robbins, to name a few. I've also spent some time with Tony Robbins and being in that community. One of the things that I noticed was that there was a ton of very, very, very successful people, but they were often driven by this, what I call driven by lack. They were driven by this desire to be approved, to be loved, to be accepted. And you mentioned that a little bit earlier in this conversation. And I wanted to ask you, when Tony does a great job of revealing that to people, and I've seen a lot of those very successful people at this like fork in the road where they go, wait a second, the whole reason why I'm so successful is because I have this insane drive that came from not being loved, and I want to be loved, and so that's fueling my my success. And then they realize, oh shoot, if I heal that psychological wound, won't that mean that my drive will go away? Will I just all of a sudden want to veg out and sit in a hammock all day and reap the rewards of my success? How do you maintain the drive while also healing the inner wound?
That's a fantastic question, right? So I mentioned my drive to become that top athlete was subconsciously fueled by my desire to be loved, to be approved, to be worthy enough of those different family members and seeking approval of others. In healing that, what still allowed me to have that drive? And so it was a subconscious drive. There was other reasons that still led me to be that person who would go the extra mile, who would do, go above and beyond what anyone else would do in anything that I felt that was important to me. So there were some positive traits combined with that subconscious trait. So in healing it, it still doesn't eradicate that dedication, that commitment, that going the extra mile, that willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes, that drive. And as I've evolved in age and wisdom, it's really come down to the quote that I heard from Zig Ziglar ages ago, decades ago, and it's been my mantra, my underlying theme, which is this: you can have everything in life you want if you simply help enough others get what they want. So if you come from that heart of giving, what I found is you can't outgive. The more you give, the more you serve, the more you provide value, the more that it will be brought back to you. As you sow, so shall you reap. Part of my chapters of growing up was moving from upstate New York to North Carolina and being on a farm. And that chapter, and what I'll say in describing my childhood, it's not to compare who had the worst childhood. We all had stuff, regardless of what your parents came to the table with, whatever race, religion, country, state, town, whatever economic stature, whatever color, whatever, all the different differentiators that people lump us into in categories. Everybody has their own stuff. Your own upbringing was your own upbringing. That's all you knew. That's all I knew. So it's not a comparison between who had the worst or who had the best. It all worked perfectly. The way that I would have you consider it is your childhood was your personal boot camp. We each had a unique boot camp that God, the universe, put us through that prepared us to be who we are today. So my boot camp was unique to me. Your boot camp was unique to you. And that gave you all the tools that you needed for you to be who you are today. So that's part A, forgiving people that you may have had anger to, forgiving people that you may have had hatred for, and actually transmuting that from the hatred and the anger and negative energy to thank you for teaching me those lessons. Because one of the other things that I've heard from one of Napoleon Hill's statements, as well as W. Clement Stone, they say every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. So the bigger the adversities that you go through, by the way, those aren't comforting words when you're going through the stuff, right? But in time, it's going to be something that you look back and say, thank you for that chapter, because that taught me this. I wouldn't wish that on anybody to learn what I learned, but holy cow, I'm so grateful for it. So I look at my whole life, all the things that I used to label as terrible or bad or unfair, it was my growing up boot camp. And so you can come to terms with that. So then fast forwarding to where you are now it's who do I serve? How do I serve them? How can I give more of myself? And what I feel is three things that differentiate me from you, from everybody else, even if we're in the same niche or industry: your personality, your experience, and your perspective. Your childhood, your life gave you a unique personality, the unique experiences that you have, and your unique perspective. And this is kind of cool. Like, so this was a big takeaway for me when I was the manager of a copier sales company. And so we sold Konica Minolta copiers. I worked from being the number one rep to being the major account manager to being the branch manager And as the branch manager, my goal was to help each of the salespeople to become as successful as they could be, because the more success they attained, it benefited me. So I opened up my Nightingale Conant library and gave them, in particular, I gave them the Zig Ziglar training on sales. I gave them a Brian Tracy training on sales, and I gave them a Tony Robbins training on sales. And I was so excited, like, here, I'm giving you this multi-$100 program that I purchased and invested. Listen to it and watch how it helps you get to another level in your sales. It taught me that not everybody thinks the way I think.
Yeah.
That was a big lesson.
I've gone through that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
What do you
what?
mean? How do you, yeah, how do you
Right,
not
right,
take this as
right.
gold?
Yeah. So, and the second lesson was you can lead a horse to water, but you can't drown it. Right. So that was so I gave them the tools, and then it took me days to even convince them to, because I kept asking them, what'd you think? What'd you think? Oh, I haven't listened to it yet. I haven't listened to it yet. Right. So the next lesson was this, and this really circles back to the three things that separate you from everyone else: your personality, your experience, and your perspective. These are three men that have totally impacted my life in extremely positive ways. So thankful and grateful for each of them. The feedback I got from the person that I gave the Tony Robbins tape to was, oh man, that dude's all hype, man. I couldn't listen for more than 5 minutes. Yeah, come on, get over yourself. Too much hype. I couldn't take it. And I wasted my time trying to convince them how this could be the thing that takes your whole life to another level. And I also learned you can't force somebody. It has to be on their terms and their choice.
Yep.
Then I heard from the Zig Ziglar person. Oh man, I listened for 5 minutes. I couldn't take his country accent. Oh, I had to turn it off. And I'm like, he will teach you stuff that you can implement to grow your results. You want more results, right? So I noticed they didn't embrace I'm like, take the best, leave the rest. Like, get over that. Just listen and learn what you can implement to grow your results. But he wasn't hearing it. Then the other person that listened to the Brian Tracy tape, hey, what'd you think? Oh man, I'd rather watch paint dry. Brian is so freaking boring. I couldn't listen for more than 5 minutes. I'm like,
That's crazy. I could listen to Brian all day.
I know, right. And that's we're not the norm, right? So
Yeah.
that was a big lesson for me to realize not everybody thinks the way I do. Not everybody subscribes to the take the best, leave the rest philosophy and mentality. And that's something I would share with you as a listener. Everybody that you cross paths with, you can learn, in my opinion. Look, everybody I cross paths with is a teacher to me in some way. Take the best, leave the rest. I believe in divine appointments. Everything happens perfectly. This person's in my path for some reason. I'm going to maximize that. Right. So take the best, leave the rest. So to the question that you asked, how can you still be driven? And it really boils back to, like, at least this is my goal for people. I want you to be you fully and unapologetically. Like I don't want people to have the masks. I don't want people to pretend. There's nothing better than being you genuinely, fully and unapologetically, and being able to be you fully and unapologetically to provide a lifestyle for you and your family that is of your desires and dreams. That's my whole goal. In all that I do, I serve people who want to be themselves fully and unapologetically and learn how to monetize that. There's nothing better than getting paid to fulfill your lifestyle for just being you. Like, that's possible. That's my life, and that's many of our mutual friends' lives. How can you be you, contributing value to the people that you want to help and serve, and just reap the rewards of being at this greatest music park in the universe?
In a lot of ways, that's a holy grail. There's so many
Yeah.
people that dream of that. They spend their whole life aiming for that and falling short. Can I ask you for a quick second if we can backtrack a little bit? This whole idea of healing that inner wound, was a near-death experience that healing moment for you, or did that we know, having been in this personal development community, if for those that are not interested, most often that feeling of not being loved or worthy really goes back to childhood experiences and mom and dad not necessarily filling that gargantuan hole of love and desire that we all seek. And undoubtedly, they always fall a little bit short. And then we're left with this psychological pain of, oh, they didn't come to my graduation or what have you. And so, yeah, was it the near-death experience that healed that? Did you have to go back and address that later as during your journey?
It's like the ingredients of a dish that you're cooking in your kitchen. All the ingredients worked for me to be where I am now, but they each had their individual like it's a whole bunch of mini things that need to be made separately, and then they finally get put into the whole big bowl. Right. So there was a lot of the near death experience was definitely a larger portion that was put into the big bowl, But I'm actually going to share that I think will be the best epiphany, hopefully, for the listeners. Hopefully you listening to this will hear this and see a portion of this in yourself. This was probably the biggest lesson. I got chills just thinking about it, of my life, because it's not just that am I lovable? Am I good enough? But the worthiness. Am I worthy of this? And so here we are. And this is a story. The story goes back to my senior year in high school, wrestling 119 pounds. I was really good at wrestling. I didn't believe I was as good as others knew me to be. So I didn't feel worthy of being at the top of this. I didn't even think I'd go to states, right? People saw me as being a state champion. So here's one perfect example, and I'll fast forward to where this epiphany changed everything for me. And this hopefully will change everything for your listeners. So 119 pounds, I'm at this dual meet. I could crush the person I'm wrestling at 119. The team had a tough person at 126. My coach came to me and said, "Hey, Tom, if you say no, I'm totally cool with it. I know you're pin this guy in seconds at 119. They have that tough dude at 126. Would you be willing to go up? Because that 126 pounder will beat our 126 pounder. We can put the JV person in who will probably beat the 119 pounder. You will probably beat the 126 pounder, and that will help us win this match." And I said, "Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, okay, game. I'm game." For those that don't know wrestling, a 7 pound difference is a big difference in weight, right? So that's 7 pounds of muscle. And so he had some height on me. So when we first get out there, he kind of threw
David
me
and Goliath.
Yeah, right. It kind of threw me a little bit, but then I ended up beating him pretty decisively. I didn't pin him, but I beat him by a decent margin. I don't remember. I'm not the type who remembers all the scores and all that stuff, but I do remember after coming out, after showering and changing, walking over to where my dad was in the bleachers. A coach from another town was talking to my dad saying, "Your son's going to win states this year." In my mind, I said, "No, I'm not. I can't beat Gary Dakar." It's a big lesson. I self-limited myself. I didn't believe the preparation and the work and the dedication that I put in was gargantuanly more than what everyone else was doing. I just thought what I was doing was what everybody else was doing. That wasn't the case. I was putting in the work, and I was dedicated and committed at a very elite level, but I didn't believe I could be even go to states, B, even win states. So that was what I said in my mind. Well, fast forward a couple months, or maybe a few weeks, it's in sectionals, and we're in a match. It's me and Gary Dakar with about 5 seconds left. The score is 0-0. Probably because I was limiting myself before we even got on the mat, right? I didn't feel I could beat this person. Well, if I had even a little bit more belief in myself, I could have crushed that kid. But needless to say, with 5 seconds left, I was like, whoa, I'm supposed to be losing to Gary. And I let him take me down with 5 seconds to go. And I lost the match. Now, did he win or did I lose? I lost the match because I didn't believe. So there's that quote that says, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." That's from Henry Ford. So I didn't think I could beat him, and I was right. If I thought I could beat him, I would have, right? And the thought, it's not being delusional. It's putting the work in and being prepared for those opportunities, for those opponents. If you're doing the proper work, you deserve to have that belief. Like, I'm going in to win this. Fast forward a couple of years. That was 1990. 1993, I'm in the Marine Corps, and I end up at Quantico, Virginia for the All-Marine Wrestling Trials. And actually, no, it was before going to the wrestling trials. We had a little wrestling community at MCAS, Cherry Point, North Carolina. And the dude who put this together was a second lieutenant who just came from the Naval Academy. And he was the team captain of the Naval Academy. He's like a bulldog. He's tough. And he's like my weight class, a little bit lighter than me. And we'd battle it out. So anyhow, we're wrestling. And I'm wrestling these other kids who are pretty tough. And I'm like, damn, I got to work hard to beat these guys. After we're done, I beat this one, I beat that one, I beat that one. They're like amazed, like, dude, like, how many times did you win states? I'm like, what? Win states? Like, I never even went to states. Like, what? And I didn't even think to ask. I'm like, why? How many times did you win states? Like, I'm a 3-time state champion. Like, what? And the other one's like, yeah, I'm a state champion. The other one's a state champion. I was the only non-state champion. And I got chills thinking about this. So in that moment, had I known they were that state champions, I wouldn't have allowed myself to beat them. One. Two, in that moment, same skill sets. This is the huge point. Same person, same skill sets, different belief. I now became a state champion beater. I love beating state champions. Huge, and some people, anyone that's in sports may have a similar moment in your career, but this moment changed everything in my life. So this was the main lesson. that I'm hoping to impart to you listening to this, that you can grasp this too. You have the goods. You're here listening to this. You know how many people aren't listening to this? You're taking the steps that put you in that elite level. You are an elite person. You have huge potential and capabilities that the world deserves to tap into. I know that because you're here listening to this. Guess what? Only 2 out of 100 people do. And you're here this far into it. That shows your dedication, your commitment. You have what it takes. So I was the same person, same skill set, different belief, and I went on to beat state champions in competition. So now fast forward to after the Marine Corps, and I'm in a tournament in 1997, and I'm in the finals against this state champion, and I beat this state champion in the finals. And needless to say, I just came out of the Marine Corps end of 96, December 96. So towards the end of 97 is when this happened. When I beat this kid, the dude's dad came out of the stands and tried fighting me on the mat. Like, and everyone else, like, who is this kid and where did he come from? Like, who is this guy? Like, I'm at that time, like 24 years old. And it was all from that tiny little wrestling experience in 1993, 94 that opened my eyes to not being able to beat a state champion to like, oh, I'm a state champion beater, and being proud of that. Like, on paper,
what a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
From a complete limitation to a launching pad of
Correct.
Another stratosphere of success.
Right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wired for Impact. If you're interested in creating and expanding your impact, be sure to visit us online at impactnow.com.